You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the show where we take a wander around the week in Apple news, reviews, technology, associated products, and all sorts of other things that catch our eye. This is another episode of the Essential Apple Podcast. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode on a cold, wet, traditional bank holiday Sunday, and I'm joined this week by Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
Yep, it's a traditional English bank holiday weekend, and despite it being quite pleasant yesterday, today is cold and wet and miserable.
It's not too bad here, but then again, I live in Pembrokeshire, so cold, wet, miserable is the mainstay of any weather. We sometimes it's less cold and it's less wet, but the weather is never good. You got to love a show on a bank holiday where we go straight into talking about the weather. It's what us Brits do very well,
isn't it? Just well. Anyway, Mark, how have you been?
Oh, blimey. The life of redundancy has taken me on some interesting journeys. I've been doing a bit of freelance IT support, including with a chap who has gone iPad only. So I thought we'd talk about that in a bit of the show.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very interesting, the whole scenario, because this chap works in London. He's very, very well to do. He has a house overlooking the river. He has technical support from someone in London, and I got introduced to him, long story short. And basically they said, you don't need a computer. You could do everything on your iPad. And I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. So and then it got me thinking, what does that mean? Mainly, he does emails. That's possible. Mainly, he can do Word documents. I taught him how to sign a PDF, and then he joined me with my rallying cry about why the hell would anybody use a Word document for a form? Because if you put your signature on there, it can be copy and pasted. Yes, I know you can do a screenshot and grab it, but at least there's like a bit more safety. Then it came down to the thing I hate doing the most in this godforsaken planet: printing. Printing. And this was the HP OfficeJet 8730, I think it was. Hell of a beast of a machine. Inkjet printer, scanner, all in one.
Is that the one we mentioned last week as being available to be faxploited?
I don't know. I don't think you'd be able to do it on this one because their internet connection's so crummy anyway. It's like downloading an app.
Oh dear. All right, yeah. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, and well, it's not really that much of an interesting story about setting up a printer, but it did get me thinking of like all the foibles. So I turned on this printer, and I should have known better in my 20 years of IT experience. You never try and print on a weekend, and especially on a Friday. I worked for HP for a couple of years, and it always bit me. So I've set up this printer, and I've thought, you know what, I'm going to try this WPS thing. You get the button on the router that says press here and then go to your other machine and they magically do their stuff.
Oh, yeah. I've never used it personally, but yeah, I am aware of it.
Twice I've used it. Twice it's failed.
I think it's more of a Windows thing, I will be honest, because sometimes setting up, connecting a Windows device can be more troublesome.
Yeah, well, that's just Windows in general. The one thing about being redundant is the fact that I can use my Mac. It's just so nice. Windows 10 has its place, but I don't know why. But in Windows, I always feel like I'm clicking. Maybe that's just psychosemantic. Oh, that's the wrong word. Nick will pick me up on that. What's it?
Psychosomatic.
All I know is bank holiday Sunday, and I'm thinking, where is the beer? Where was I? So that didn't work. I've put the key in, the WPA doodad key. That didn't work. Great. So I turned it off, turned it on, started the whole thing again. Didn't work. Turned it on, off, turned it back on again, and then miraculously it connected. So, okay, and this is where I find it. This is where it gets a bit interesting because I've learned from experience now. When you print on an iPad or an iPhone, you get no options. Well, no, that's not technically true. You can do double-sided if your printer supports it. You can print in color, black and white, and that's it. You have no other control over the printer, which sort of makes sense, I suppose, because you could do it all from the printer. So if you want to print on A5, you go to the printer, you put A5 paper in the printer, you tell the printer that it's going to use A5 paper. This is a really boring story, isn't it? Anyway, I'm going to keep going.
Keep going. Push on regardless.
You just push on regardless. You know what I should have done? I should have saved this for our lovely, lovely Patreon people and bored them to death with it. And a big shout out to Andy, Chris, Nick, and Teresa, our lovely, lovely, lovely Patreon subscribers. Because without you, we wouldn't have the hosting for this show. It all goes back into the hosting. Anyway, back to my story. Printing, it's all right. The reason why it sort of rankles me is because if you want to print an email, you want to do like a fast draft copy. And you can't do it unless you go to the printer, put the paper in until it's gone to fast in draft. So it sort of got me like, I just wish there was a bit more in the world of, being able to do things with a printer and an iPad anyways. But the thing that got me was scanning. Because off the top of your head, how do you think you would scan from a all-in-one printer to your iOS device?
Interesting. Tell me more.
That was exactly where I was at because... Again, coming back to the whole Windows world, you could scan to a computer. Well, that obviously doesn't work. You could scan to a network share. Well, obviously, that's not going to work. You could scan to HP's cloud service thingy, which I immediately thought, yeah, no, thank you, HP. I wouldn't trust you with my data. No. I don't know why. That's probably completely unfounded. Sorry if anyone from HP is listening, but I don't know. When you try and get that gratuitous shoehorn in, I don't recall there being a scan to Dropbox, OneDrive, or anything else like that. So instead, you have to go and get an app, which is fair enough. In full credit to HP here, when you get their app, it's so simple that the level of technology, the technology awareness level of these people that I were helping, when I showed them how to draw their signature on the screen, they actually tried to use a pen. I had to very calmly say, well, that won't work because it's not capacitive. That was a funny little moment. But it was so nice, though. Once they saw that they could do stuff on their iPad, like sign a document, I'm like, oh, wow. So then we went through things like, well, if they've got a document from London that they want to scan, you scan it, open it up in preview, sign it, and send it away. And they were like, that's just going to save a whole load of fuss and hassle and stuff like that. So basically, long story short, this couple now are fully in on the iPad. Admittedly, they're a very basic usage case, but it was nice to see to actually take off the shackles, the safety net. Because I actually boxed away their PC and took it home. Now, the problem I've got now is they've got all of their contacts in Outlook, but not on their iPad. So I'm wondering, how do I get them off one and put them onto the other? Because you can export from Outlook, no problem at all. But then how would you get that list onto an iPad?
Well, why don't they just get Outlook for the iPad?
I think they're trying to avoid subscriptions, and he's using
Outlook.
Mail.
I don't think you have to pay to use Outlook.
That's a point. If it's got all the contacts in there, that would work.
Well, I'm just saying, even if you were to download Outlook for iOS, that should then have the contacts in, and then you should be able to probably export them from there to your address book. And then Apple Mail should pick them up.
That's a good point. I can give that a try. I for some reason, because I'm locked into this whole Office 365 mantra, I was thinking, oh yeah, you're going to have to pay for Outlook, but that's not part of Office 365, is it?
I think Outlook is available for free. There we go. I'd have to double check that, but I don't think you need a subscription to use Outlook.com.
On a hopefully a less boring story about a printer. I'm sorry, Simon. You've invited me on the old show, and it's like I've come on and talked about printers and yields, and oh god. But this is it. This is my only outlet now for talking to people. This show. That's it. It's like quite literally my life consists of, if I want to go anywhere near humanity, it's a 20-minute drive or an hour's cycle. But here's another one going on from Outlook then. What other email clients do you use? Because I've been thinking, I've got Apple Mail, but I'm kind of not too happy with the way that I've got several email accounts, and I want one that's just purely for my iCloud.com, and I don't want to use the godforsaken iCloud.com interface. I don't know why. I just can't.
Well, I have.
Just doesn't stick.
I have. I don't know 6 accounts in my on my iPhone in Apple Mail. I have Proton Mail. I have iCloud. I have Google Mail. I have a couple of others.
Maybe I should just stop being so lazy and actually prune down. All right. So pop quiz then. How many unread emails have you got in your dock right now?
Me? None, because I'm an email zero boy.
I am currently at 4,067.
Yeah, I think that might be what Dr. Mac would say: unsubscribe, unsubscribe, unsubscribe.
But that's the thing. Now I've got this time on my hands. It's FOMO. I might miss something. It's the whole ridiculous thing, and that reminds me, I must get on with my Dr. Happy Mac learning lessons.
And if they're more than a week old, Mark, they're not going to be any use for anything anyway.
Yeah, but you never know. That's my point. Well, hang on then. Well, that's like backups. If a backup's more than a week old, it's not worth it. So why back up?
No, that's not how that works.
Oh, I can hear. What's his name? The guest we had on, who I had the argument with about backing ups being pointless.
I don't remember now. I remember you saying it, but no, we were both against you. No, you're wrong. Back up.
Well, as I haven't been on the show for a while, the backup status is still ongoing.
You mean none?
Well, technically, I do put things into iCloud.
Well, that's something, I suppose.
Yeah, it's something. But then if I kind of screw up a file, which I have done, I haven't got a way to revert back. But that leads us on to our next story of Back to the Mac is going to be dead in Mojave. Now, I always wanted to use Back to my Mac. I could never work it out. If you go in Google how to use Back to my Mac, you get nothing, unless it's just me being useless, which, let's face it, would probably be not beyond the realms. In fact, let's do it. How to use Back to my Mac. There's actually it's actually worked now.
I suspect there's an Apple support document, but it's a bit late now because they're killing it after 10 years apparently. And I must admit, I have never used it. And a quick straw poll in the Slack indicated that most people in our Slack group who have tried to use it say that they've had a pretty poor success rate with it. So there we go. I suspect not many people use it.
But can you connect to your Mac from a Windows PC?
I have no idea. I suspect not, because I don't know, truth be told. I have to admit that for such things, I used to use LogMeIn, and when LogMeIn pulled their free tier, I switched to TeamViewer.
Oh, no, not TeamViewer. Jesus, I'd even rather go through the hell of setting up a VNC connection and use TeamViewer.
Yeah, TeamViewer's fine.
It is until it gets hacked and they go, oh, no, there's been no security alerts here. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Dear TeamViewer, can you explain why I have 300 contacts on my contact list? Well, you must have given out your ID. No. And I've said this story many, many, many times, but it's worth going one more time. I was sat on the sofa a year or so ago. I had TeamViewer running on my machine, and it was in standby. The screen was off, screensaver mode sort of thing. And then it just comes on. I'm like, well, okay, maybe I've moved the mouse or the dog's hit the keyboard or whatever. I see the mouse moving. Okay. And then I see the TeamViewer connection. Oh, okay. And then the thing that they tried to do straight away was go right in and go and get to my PayPal account and try and empty my PayPal account. And since then, no, Do not trust it. It's so much so that what is it now? I've been watching the YouTube, because we all know how good YouTube is to to kill time. That they've actually banned. Let me think about it. They've banned outgoing connections from places like India and Pakistan, where all the scammers are. So what they do is they'll social engineer you to download TeamViewer, and then you remote into them, and then you give them control, because it's become so bad they actually start blocking connections from certain countries.
Yeah. And talking of scams, this is this week's public service announcement. I've been off work this week, having a rest, and we had a phone call, which was like a robocall, and said, "This is BT, and your account, your IP address has been compromised from a foreign country, and we will be turning off your internet unless you press 1 to speak to an engineer." So normally, of course, I'd have just slammed the phone down, but my wife pressed 1 and said, "Shh, watch this." And so we got some bloke who was most blatantly not English, probably not in the UK, and he said he was from BT, and that our IP address had been compromised from Mountain View, California. Right, so Google are trying to hack me, are they? That's highly likely. So I let him waffle on for a bit, and then I said, let me get this straight. You at BT have determined that my IP address has been compromised from Mountain View in California. Yes, that's right. I said, well, that's funny, isn't it? Because I don't have an account with BT, and I'm a network systems analyst and a security consultant, at which point he slammed the phone down.
I for some reason, if I go into Gmail, I always get these people. I always seem to get Google chats from people going, "Hi BBE," which I now know means baby. I think it does.
No idea.
And it's always the same story with the scammers. They either lived in America / Canada, their mum / dad / aunt / uncle died. They've had to move back home to look after their mum / dad / uncle. Da 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 da. And it's always the same story. And once I had 3 of these sort of like scammers on the go, just for the crack of it. And they gave me one village in Ghana, and then I'd say, "Oh, let me guess, you live in so and so." So I managed to social engineer the conversation so I could copy and paste responses from one to the other. And now I realise that I need to get out more.
Yes, you need a better hobby, Mark.
Yeah, but it's all I've got now. It's all I've got.
Oh dear, it's a bit like this is a bit inside baseball, but the essential Apple at sudomail.com address, I receive the same stock letter about 4 times a week saying, "I've come across your website and I've determined all these things are wrong with it," but it's always the same stock letter. So apart from sending one back saying to one guy saying, "You do realise I get this letter 5 times a day." So I don't believe any of you.
Apple website is you obviously haven't listened to the podcast. That would give you all the answers you need to know, sunshine.
On top of which, the English spelling and grammar is pretty poor, so they are not in California. There you go.
Oh, blimey! Just what else have we got on this? It's been quite a relief actually having a bit of time away from the podcasting and stuff, because I know nothing, and I know that comes as no surprise to any of our listeners. But I now know nothing more than I normally know nothing about, and that's quite spectacular.
Okay, well, let's have a look at some of the Apple stories, shall we, Mark?
I did hear about the Netflix thing and the iTunes billing.
Oh, yes. Well, that's Netflix, of course, are threatening, I believe, to pull out of using iTunes billing and to do, only being able to pay through their website or their app, I believe. Well, I've put a link in here to the TechPinions podcast for this week because they were talking about it, and yes, I can see why. And the overall, I think the overall assumption of most people is if you're big enough, if you're Amazon, if you're Netflix, if you're somebody like that, you can afford to not be in the App Store or paying by iTunes and giving Apple 30% of all your take, or 15% after the first year, because people will search you out regardless. If you want if you want a Kindle book, you're quite happy probably to go to Amazon and buy it there, or to buy it on your Kindle directly. If you're Netflix, then I don't suppose many people would have too much trouble, paying by direct debit, or linking to their card. But if you're, as we've said before, if you're a small developer, it doesn't matter how good your app is if people can't find it.
Well, yeah, but I think that's two different arguments, though, isn't it? It's like Netflix for the Netflix side, yes, they want to have as much revenue as you can, but I'm sort of, the whole thing with Apple now is, we seem to be going more and more into this subscription system, with Apple slowly leading the way. And if you look at all that, what was it? Was it the quarterly report where everyone was commenting on, oh my gosh, look how much they're raking in from subscription stuff. If they were to reduce that 30%, would they ever do that? Because Tim's a financial person. He's not going to drop a price just for the sake of, growing. And if Netflix was to sort of remove their in-app purchasing through the app, would it really make that much of a difference to Netflix? I'm guessing it would, because obviously they're complaining about it. So it's obviously having some sort of impact on their bottom line.
Well, I'm not sure that it's necessarily that it's having a terrible effect, just that I suspect they feel that what do they get out of, the percentage they pay Apple, apart from a little bit of frictionlessness, not a lot. Because they're big enough to do their own marketing. They're well known to all and sundry, and people will search them out. But what I'm saying is, for many smaller developers, being on the App Store is, Apple do put quite a lot of work into promoting the app stores, to doing their best to surface apps and so on. And we all know it's not perfect, But I do think that for a lot of people, the effort that Apple puts in is probably worth the percentage.
Yeah, Amazon's been a bit quiet about that sort of thing, though, for a while, isn't it? But I'm guessing that they've had the deal with, they've got prominent placement on Apple TV, which is why I'm guessing that maybe Netflix isn't on the Apple TV, as in, the actual Apple TV app.
Oh, what? The app? I don't use that. But I have got Netflix on my Apple TV.
Yeah,
as an app, but it's not inside the Apple TV app, as it were.
Yeah.
The app inside an app, as it were.
Amazon's on there, and it's starting to get a bit better. Amazon, it feels like a little bit more like a native app, but that's the thing. It feels a little bit more like a native app, but you can still tell it's not, and it's some sort of weird and funky, some sort of web UI doodah thingy going on there.
Wow. As I've only used the actual Amazon Prime video app itself and not gone inside the Apple TV, I couldn't comment. I'll be honest. And I don't watch Amazon half as much as I watch Netflix. I'll be honest. There's a lot of trash on. There's a lot of old junk in the Amazon library.
Yeah, Netflix seems to have gotten rid of, because when I was first using Netflix, it was basically like going into a VHS video rental store. It just felt like, there's repeats of all old TV programs on there, and I wasn't initially that impressed, but now they've seemed to have gone all in with this, their own content. Final Space, that's a huge recommendation for me, and I'll put that in the show notes. That's a really good, that's something I've been binge watching. I did have a point there coming up in my head, but I digressed so much that even my brain went, yeah, no, that's gone.
So there we are. I suppose we should just mention that Apple have donated $1 million to flood relief efforts in Kerala, which I believe is in India, where they've had a devastating flood. So well done, Apple, I guess, for that. I know $1 million isn't probably much more than pocket change to them, but good to see them doing it anyway.
Well, so on the opposite end of that scale, then there's a story here. Apple will be making a mistake if it no longer offers a low-cost Mac Mini. Oh God, it's almost like one of those Business Insider articles goes. Here's why I think Apple are making a mistake if they don't X, Y, Z. But this got me thinking. So before we started the show, I was ranting and raving about the fact I had the opportunity to buy a HP Omen accelerator, which is a Thunderbolt 3 enclosure. And it was down from £299 down to 150. And yes, I procrastinated. I didn't buy it. And guess what? They're all sold out. But it got me thinking then, if the Mac Mini was to get a bit of an update and it was like, say, reasonably priced, and I could get one of these enclosures for, let's say, 150 quid, which is probably never, ever, ever going to happen ever again, plus a graphics card, you've suddenly got a machine there that's not a worthy, that's quite up there with being able to be a decent gaming PC.
Well, we're trying to stay away from the rumours about what's upcoming, but I have to say there's a lot of rumbling about the Mac Mini. I think some of it's more in hope than, any actual evidence. But if they don't update the Mini this time, then really they need to kill it. It's just honest truth, isn't it? It's
Yeah, but they're still selling the trash can. The trash can Mac Pro, and we know that there's another one coming. Tim doesn't kill a product. If there's one thing you can say about the Tim Cook era is, and I hope I'm right in saying this, and feel free to Twitter us at Essential Apple or email in if I'm wrong. There doesn't seem to be much in the way of things that have been killed off so much recently. There has been the iPod?
Well, they killed off the iPods, and they killed the AirPorts, didn't they?
That's the one I was trying to think of.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. They haven't really, the MacBook Air is still lingering, even though that kind of makes a mess of the the notebook range. Yeah,
the MacBook. Well, they basically just called the MacBook, isn't it? That lovely little cute dinky thing that when I went to London and met Carl a couple of years ago, there was myself, Simon Hartness, and we all had a quick on the keyboard, and it was very, I like it, I hate it.
That one, yeah. Well, but of course now they've all got, bar the Air, they all have that keyboard. Now, however, with a silicon anti-grunge barrier.
Which is for noise dampening, not in any way, shape, or form to keep dust out because of that lawsuit.
No, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of stuff all over the web about the Mini. I was trying to stay away from prognostications because obviously the Apple as yet to be announced autumn event can't be very far away, and then all will be revealed.
I thought that it was announced, or was it a story that I read this morning saying likely to be announced?
Yes, it's not. I think the smart money seems to be on the 12th of September, but of course, as yet, no invitations have been sent, so there's no criminology to be had as yet.
There was very little in the way of criminology on the last event, was there really?
No, that is true.
And I think the one before was sort of given up upon. But that's like saying, that analyst blokey, Minji Kuo, or whatever his name is, him.
Yes, who said he was going to stop talking about Apple and has done absolutely no such thing. As we were talking last week about how he had prognosticated about AR glasses for 2020 and an Apple car by 2025.
Jesus, he really is stretching out there.
Mm-hmm.
I've told you the story that I got to go in a Tesla, and now that's all I can dream about is going in a Tesla again.
Well, I have a story here which might put you off slightly, actually, which I found.
Never.
Right, what a modern car crash looks like, and this was on Twitter. And there's a tweet here, and when it loads, I'll read it out. It's a fascinating post from a Tesla owner. Problem turned out to be firmware update, which hadn't downloaded and installed properly. Tesla was helpful, but this is what a car crash now looks like. And here is the post. Anyone got any ideas? I arrived in Glasgow with 20 miles spare battery, got out of the car and opened the boot to get the charge cable out. As I was plugging it in, the charge door shut and the car powered down. I was unable to plug in the cable, and I cannot open the doors because the fob is inside the car. The app cannot connect to the car, and the car appears to be bricked. So,
That sounds like one of my stories. Like, being completely just screwed at every opportunity.
so there you go. You might have other problems with your Tesla than, auto driving issues.
Yeah, but the auto driving's an extra $5,000. So I was told it doesn't come in stock; you have to pay for it.
Oh, right, okay.
And I was like, oh, well, that's taking the sheen off a little bit. But I don't know. I drove a Fiat something or other the other day. I actually, like I said, I got to play with CarPlay, and that had sort of it would actually self drive itself in so much it would play bumper cars off the railing. So when you're going around a corner or on a straight or basically on the road, I should have said, if you stray towards the white lines on either side, it gently nudges you back into a decent driving position. But it only does it 3 times before it starts screaming at you, saying, "Pay attention to the road." Because of course, I've got 3.5 hours to kill, so I'm thinking, how far can I drive without actually having to, push myself back into the middle of the road? It's nice and quite spooky, and it's one of those things where like how we're always going on about, technology. Does it make us sloppy? Does it make us a little bit less focused and concentrate on the road? And it's one of those times where I generally thought that for the right target demographic, i.e., those of a slightly aged gap, who are always the ones that are like either middle lane hoggers or they're not quite sure how wide their new car is. It's really handy. And I've got to admit, apart from me being a complete doofus thinking, right, I don't need to hold the steering wheel, which is completely kind of contradicts what I said about self-driving. It was a nice little thing to play with. It really was.
Yeah, very good.
Drive responsibly, though. Drive responsibly.
Drive responsibly. Yes, we don't want anybody getting trashed as a result of listening to Mark's advice.
On a Tesla, you didn't even need to go into ludicrous mode. It's just so nice. No, it's one of those things where don't meet your heroes because you'll either be disappointed or overwhelmed. And now it's happened to me. I feel like there is just that thing missing in my life.
Ah, well, there we are. All right, I've got a link in here, and this is just one to mention because it's quite a long thing, and if you're interested in it, you need to go and watch it yourself. And it's been touted on Twitter, but Oliver Breidenbach, of Boinks, of course, and guest of this show, is part of a round table talking about has Apple abandoned professional Mac users, and that's on ZNet. So the link's in the show notes if you want to go and watch that. It's about an hour long, I think, and I'm not sure they reach any firm conclusion by the end of it, but I haven't watched all of it yet. But there we go. It's an interesting discussion, so I'll just mention that one. And the other Apple story, really. Oh no, there's 2 more actually. Apparently, apps and developers were hit by a day-long Apple CloudKit outage. Don't know what else to say about that. That was an Apple Insider story. Apparently, the CloudKit was down for some time. And it has the same picture of the data center that has appeared in 2 other stories we mentioned last week. So that's obviously a stock picture
images, yeah,
of that man, that poor solo man walking down the long corridor of blades.
It couldn't have been that bad because it didn't seem to crop up much on the standard Twitter feeds and.
No, it didn't. I didn't see anybody screaming about it, so it can't have been that terrible.
Well, that's worth touching on. That whole Twitter thing, that Twitter have basically locked down their APIs so they have control over the engagement experience with their customer base.
In other words, you mean they shafted all the third-party clients?
Yeah, so everyone who's helped us to get here is like, oh, thank you very much. No, yeah, we're going to do it all, which is gutting because I actually chopped out $7.99 for a Twitter app. So it's like, oh, see, it's me again. If I buy a Mac, you can guarantee a new Mac's going to come out. If I buy an app, you can guarantee it's going to go under.
Well, I mean, third-party clients, I think, are doing their best to soldier on, but I don't know how well they're going to manage that with the way that Twitter has hobbled them. And I wouldn't mind so much if Twitter hadn't pulled their bloody Mac client.
Yeah. But then again, is this just the whole thing of, well, the web app experience is just as good?
Well, there isn't a web app or anything. You just have to use the browser, which
Yeah,
is
that's
nasty.
what I mean. Yeah.
Nasty by comparison.
Well, I think we're all going to be in for a bit of a shock because we're getting in Safari Technology Preview. If you use a web page that seems to be a little bit hungry on power and energy, it says closing this tab may increase this page is using significant energy. Closing it may increase the responsiveness of your Mac.
Yes, it does.
If we're going to see a little bit more of that.
Twitter, by the way, the Twitter webpage nearly always brings up that the moment you load it. So there we are.
Yeah, do you use the Safari Technology Preview, or
I do indeed. Yes, I use the purple one. The purple one. Yes, I do. I've been using that forever. Truth be told.
Yeah, I had a few sort of issues with it about a week or so ago. Then an update came along and nixed it. I've got a question out there for the listeners. Now, we were just talking before the show. Just before the show, I was saying about, oh God, my late 2012 i7 Mac Mini is running really slow and I'm seeing beach balls all the time. Have any of our listeners out there used a SSD over USB 3, and how have they found it in comparison to using an internal hard drive? Let us know via @EssentialApple, or go to the website, fill in the contact form, or email us at, he says, scrolling down the document,
essentialappple@sudomail.com. Yes. I was blank for a minute. I couldn't remember if it was .net or .com, but it is sudo.
Yes, of course. It's finally clicked now. Sudo. Yes. So essentialapple@sudomail.com. Let us know, because it's an experiment would be worth trying, because you can pick up an SSD now, 120 gigabyte SSD for £25 here in the UK. And I'm thinking, shove that in with a USB 3 enclosure. Would it work? Is there any downside to any upside? So if anyone out there wants to chip in and give us a bit of real world feedback and experience on, how they've gotten on with it, then please do.
Yes, please do. I would suspect that using an SSD, even over USB 3, would be far superior to the hard drive in a Mac Mini, because isn't the Mac Mini using a 5800? It's not even a 7200, is it?
Sounds plausible.
Yeah, I believe it's a laptop, 5800 RPM drive, which is notoriously slow.
I might even just do it just so, with an SSD being that cheap, bang Mojave on there and just run it off there.
Yep, I probably highly recommend that.
Because, but it's like I said, just coming back full circle. Oh, just being back on my Mac is so lovely. What else? How long have we been recording for, Simon?
I don't know, because we were. I had the recording running for some time before we actually started. Well, I'll tell you what. Shall we have a break for Nemo's hardware store?
Yeah, I need
and
to.
And then we'll come back and have a look at some of the other stories.
Yeah, so coming up after the break, we've got some feedback from Mac Jim about the Surface Go running. The Surface Go running Windows 10 Home in S mode. We've got a follow-up about talking about ARM. We've done the car crash, and 5 myths about iPhone battery life you might mistakenly believe. So
yes,
that's coming up after Nemo.
Yep. So take it away, John.
Nemo's hardware store is back with a new backpack from Solo, New York, SOLO, and their website is solo-ny.com. It's a full-featured backpack called the Boyd, B-O-Y-D. Cost in the U.S. is $125. Code is SLHLD7009. From their Highland collection, the Boyd backpack. Highland refers to the muted bluish-gray tartan plaid of the outer fabric. The fabric itself is a waxed canvas, very durable, very sturdy, and I've grown quite fond of their waxed canvas products over the years. It took me a while to get used to them versus leather and nylon, and now the wax canvas is definitely worth considering. In spite of being compact, it has 2 full-size water bottle pouches, elasticized on either side, a very rugged grip handle on the top, 2 comfortable straps as you would expect, and then the chest support strap that goes between the 2 straps to anchor and support you. The very, very back is a pass-through, so you can slot the Boyd over your rolling luggage handle. There's the top zippered compartment that opens up to reveal a 15-inch MacBook Pro slot and full-size iPad slot, as well as a capacious main zone for your clothes, your shoes, your books, magazines, food, headphones, anything else you want to bring. Lots of room in there. Then the upper front zone zips open. This is fairly small to put in your wallet, bus passes, tube passes, iPhone, iPod, smaller stuff. Then there's a fully protected lower front area, a little bit larger. I keep my batteries, my chargers, my cables in there. So they've really thought this out as far as the design and the material and the pockets and the place to insert all of your stuff. And like I said, it looks small, but it has lots of room. Every month I give a presentation at the Tucson Macintosh User Group, and prior to this month I was using the roll top backpack, also from Solo, New York, which has a fairly peculiar and extremely retro design. The Highland Boyd has a more conventional design, and it's much more utilitarian and practical and useful for me in doing my presentations wherever I happen to be. So the Boyd has moved into the top position as far as going wherever I do a user group presentation. Make sure you see the movie on their website that shows all the things you can put in. And in fact, you can get about 2 or more times that stuff comfortably into the Boyd. So thank you, Solo, New York, for providing this for Nemo's Hardware Store Review. We are very happy to be using it and to be recommending it. Back next week.
And thank you, John, for another enlightening store. And that was the Boyd backpack, which, as you can tell, John is very, very keen on indeed. So, Mark, let's have a look at some of these other stories that we were talking about before the break.
Because I've been using, just to come back to John's stuff, because I've been using a old, it's not hung up where it should be. Bloody hell, where is it actually? Now I think on it. Bugger. I've been using it's about 7 years old now, and the only reason I've kept this backpack, which is falling apart, is because it's the only one that's had semi-decent padding. And what I mean by semi-decent is it's not one of these stupid foamy things that you put around your device so it doesn't get scratched. I mean, I'm talking a serious half-inch of padding on the bottom, so when it falls onto the floor, it's not going to break. Why do we never get sent any stuff like this to review?
Why, indeed. Although I am still rocking my second brain think tank MacBook 13-inch briefcase, which is a very nice piece of kit, I have to say.
You see, where they've gone wrong with this backpack, in my personal opinion. So if you go to the link, which is solo-ny.com, full link in the show notes, there's a MacBook, right? Brilliant. Looks all nice there. There's an iPad, nice there. There's a magazine there. Yeah. Something that looks like, if I'm not mistaken, something like a floppy disk. I'm sure it's not, but it just looks like it. But where's the power pack? And more importantly, where would my sandwiches go?
Well, John, if you if you listen back to John, you'll find him telling you that he can get all of those things in that backpack and more.
Yeah, well, we're talking proper sandwiches, though. We're talking white bloomer with half a ton of cheese and a bit of ham in there. None of this, panini nonsense. I mean, paninis, that's just a con, isn't it? It's like baguettes that don't quite make the grade. Oh, I know what we'll do. We'll heat them up and squash them down.
There we go. Around the world cuisine with Mark
that-
Chappell.
If that is not made into a highlight clip for the Christmas show, then nothing will. But it's true. I mean, what is it? It's basically, it's flat baguette, crush it. Oh, I know. We'll put some fancy grill lines on it and maybe some rocket. Oh, yeah, fancy now, isn't it?
Oh dear.
Spare for this world. Although, and before anyone accuses me of being anti-hipster, which I'm a little bit, I would like the world to know that I have tried a turmeric latte, and I'm not ashamed to say I enjoy it.
Oh, there you go. There you go, indeed. Right. Well, where should we go? Let's. There was this review on ZNet, the Surface Go running Windows 10 Home in S mode. It's a week with article. Link in the show note. Mac Jim in our Slack room said, I went to John Lewis to have a look at the new Surface Go from Microsoft, as it has piqued my interest as a device to use on the go. Sick. For editing images on a desktop editing software. I can say it's a really nice device to hold. It is light and near as damn it the same as my iPad Pro in feel and size. I didn't get to see it working though, as too many people had tried to unlock it without using the admin password. However, it is a great price and a nice size. So there we go.
Yeah, see, this is the problem with this review. It's reviewed it without the pen. So you're not getting. Why would you get a device like this without the pen? Which is what obviously that's going to be one of the big selling points on it. I could probably tell you why, because it'll be a laggy, horrible mess, which is like my Surface Pro 4 was. Although some apps were better optimized than others, but this is where it all comes down to the App Store. And up until August, when I was still able to use one, I couldn't find any good quality apps. You had a couple from Adobe, like the Express. I'm just trying to rack back what was on my start screen. And there was just nothing. There was never anything there that would make me think, oh, you know what, I want to try that and I want to download that. It just felt like the old days, like shovelware, but not even a decent attempt at shovelware. When you get pricing, apps that are going £1.99 for unzipping a file, £1.98, £1.95, £1.43. And it's like, oh, really?
Well,
that for the price, it's not too bad for a Windows laptop. It's just that I'm still unconvinced. Yes, it's nice to have a laptop without the screen, but there's been so many times in Windows 10 where I've rotated it, the keyboard hasn't come up or it hasn't popped up, or the handwriting, for example, the handwriting recognition works really well. But I never worked out that when you got to the end of that line, how did you get it to go down to the next line? It just wasn't intuitive and stuff like that. Things like, so I'm ragging on Microsoft here. There's an old control panel applet for increasing your handwriting recognition, which doesn't work because it's there, but the lights are on and nobody's home. That being said, it does look quite like a nice bit of kit. Even if, what was they saying in a review here that they claim 11 hours of, let's have a look here. The Go's battery life is nothing to write home about. Microsoft official claim is the Go gets up to 9 hours running loops locally. In my real life usage, I'm getting about 4.5 hours with the brightness set with the way it ships and Bluetooth turned off. Then they say, note, the battery meter on the device isn't accurate. Mine said I have 11 hours of life when the device is fully charged and 20% left when it's nearly out of juice.
Well.
No, if that had been Apple, they would have been raked across the coals for this.
Yes, that is true. Anyway, this guy seems quite pleased with it overall. So it's worth a read. It's not a terribly long article. I think in the end, as he says, is the convenience of a nice-to-have device, but one that won't replace my phone, my real laptop or Kindle, really worth $679 plus tax, which seems quite a lot.
Hang on a sec. Hang on. There's a statement here. You might need to explain this to me. Let me just have a quick cup of tea because I realise I'm chewing a biscuit down my microphone. What sort of animal would put milk in before water in a cup of tea? So this bit confuses me. I'm able to run my typical apps like Skype, Office Online, Notepad, TweetDeck, and a couple of others fine on the go. The Pentium Gold processor inside the device means that no emulation is required to run x86 based apps. And if when a user upgrades out of S mode, x86 apps not available in the store can be downloaded onto the device. Now, he said he's writing this in a non-reviewer sort of way. So why mention the fact it runs on a Intel chip and not an ARM chip?
Well, that's a.
Do you see what I mean? It
well,
just sort of it feels like, oh, blimey, we have to do something here to promote Intel.
Well, as he says a bit further on, I do most of my work in a browser, and Microsoft's Edge browser works noticeably better on the Intel-based Go than on the ARM-based HP Envy X2, which I test drove a few months back. So I guess he's got a fair reason to mention that there. And
Yeah,
I mean,
but-
it is. I think it is probably quite important for users to know that if you buy that, it's not an RT type device. It will run full blown x86 applications.
Just beat me to it. Are they saying that so we don't have the Surface RT? But we're back here again, because now, as he just said, you've got that ARM-based unit, which I want to read a review of that, and I should have done that before I went into this to see how long that lasted. They're saying, oh, it's not an RT, but if you want something that is like an RT, you can go over here. It's just that it just seems a typical Microsoft thing of, they tried the RT, it didn't work. Now they're trying it on ARM because everyone's saying that Apple should be, going to ARM. And once again, you've now got two different bits of hardware that will use the store, and it'll be a little bit like, oh, won't run on this. It's like on Android devices where you say, oh, won't run on this phone, but it's an Android. Why not? Anyways, Windows, blur.
There we are. So there's a review of the Microsoft Go, and of course,
by the way, he really didn't like the ARM-based Envy, but then considering most of his work was done in Edge, which unsurprisingly is going to be a load of poo on an ARM device.
Yes, that is true. There we are. So that's that one. And I'll mention this in relation to what we were talking about, and about ARM in general, and ARM-based Macs possibly, and all the rest. The Tech Pinion podcast last week was NVIDIA Turing, ARM CPUs, the AMD Threadripper, and Intel AI, which was an interesting listen. It was Bob O'Connell, is it O'Connell or O'Donnell? Anyway, it was Bob and Tim Baharin. Unfortunately, the sound quality wasn't great. Something went wrong. I wrote to Tim Baharin, and he told me that something had gone wrong with the recording, which he wasn't aware of until later on, which I commiserated with, because it's a terrible blow as a podcaster when something goes wrong and you don't realise.
Have you had it when you realise that none of your audio was recorded, but the guests have recorded perfectly? So therefore,
Yes.
you go back and try and record your part of the audio, and with the same tone and intonations as if you were actually there. Have you had to do that one before?
No, I've never actually had to do that. I've usually managed to salvage it some way, somehow. I've usually managed to salvage it.
I've been there when I haven't, and Carl Madden has had the same thing as well. It's like, oh, I can't lose this. That's oh Lord, that's always interesting.
So there you go. So forgive the sound quality on that Tech Pinions podcast, but if you're interested in their view about what's happening in the whole silicon field, that's worth a listen. It's only half an hour long. All the Tech Pinions are sort of 25 to 30 minutes long. And it's a show I listen to fairly religiously because I find their insights quite enlightening, to be honest. They're, industry analysts, but not of the Ming Chi Kuo type, I would hasten to add. More of the, this is what we think is happening, and so on. So there we are. And then there's the 5 myths about iPhone battery life you might mistakenly believe.
Business Insider.
It's Business Insider.
God!
Your favourite, Mark. Your favourite. But
it's like so-and-so. Oh, well, that's great journalism, because you automatically think that you have some editorial prowess. That means people are going to listen to you. God's sake.
But there you go. Despite
Six
Mark's...
things Apple must do. What, really? Because your website, Business Insider, you actually had something on about nail fungal the other week. Oh, that's related to business.
Oh, you love them so much, don't you?
Oh, they just, even though I've tried to get rid of them out my feed, they keep popping up. It's like a stain in your carpet you can't get rid of.
Right, shall we move on to the security stories?
No, I'm going to spoil this for everyone. Right, here's what they say. Myth 1, closing apps you're not using to save battery life. Wrong. Myth 2, charging your phone can hurt the battery. Wrong. $29 battery replacement is guaranteed to improve your battery's device life. Nah. Turning off settings like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi will always save your battery life. Letting your iPhone adjust brightness automatically hurts battery life, and that's it. That's the content. However, recommended from the web, from Suits to Sussex. Hey, Meghan's Markle life is changed. McLaren P1, excellent car speed. Breakfast with a twist. Fun recipes for the kids. On Business Insider. God's sake.
Right, okay. Let's go on to the security stories, shall we?
Oh my God, they've even got Business Insider. Business Insider. That has a name that, Renaissance with, bit of Wall Street, bit of dealing, share prices. I kid you. In fact, you're going to want to bleep this, Simon. I you not. I am watching a thing that says, this London-based food truck only sells cheese sandwiches. Here, wait. Oh, no, wait.
Go on.
Here's how they're made.
Oh,
And I'm looking at a caption that says, it goes through a lot of cheese.
no.
Jesus! Bleep this, Simon. This is on the Business Insider. Oh, God, and you wonder why my God, the doctor goes, how's your blood pressure? Good, I haven't looked at Business Insider. There's an article about a cheese van.
I think this episode might be Mark loses his over cheese.
Grilled cheese sandwiches. Oh, really? I thought it was a Prosecco wagon. Oh, wait, no, it's called a cheese truck. Right, so let me give you the three lead items here by Amanda Villalobos. United Kingdom selling grilled cheese sandwiches. Number 2, the sandwiches are pressed with a flat, hot iron so the cheese melts. The 2 sides of the bread are buttered, giving it that extra crunch. Oh, God!
It's a Breville toasty machine.
I'm mistaken. And that's the article. There was a video of 3 minutes long.
Of somebody making a cheese toasty. Oh, dear. I'm sure this is going to have to be called Mark loses his over cheese.
Oh, there's a caption. In fact, this is going to be the show art. I can't because when you pause it, there's adverts. Right, I'm going to click that. This is going to be the show art. I know there's a bit post-production going on here, but it goes through a lot of cheese. Simon, you'll probably get a better kick. Oh, God.
All right, it's it.
Sober again. In fact, where's Gaz or Guy or whoever it is? Where's he? He loses over this as well.
Oh dear. Right. Okay. Airmail 3 exploit instantly steals info from Apple users.
Prolong your life. 7 ways to breathe differently.
Oh dear. So there you go. That's on Threat Post. Be careful of Airmail 3, by the way. Okay. Apple have removed Facebook's Anavo so-called VPN from the App Store for gathering app data.
Oh, hang on. I can do this. What? Really? Did that sound sincere?
Really.
What? When I reported on this way back in 2015, that if you read their terms and conditions, they harvest all of your data and then they sell it on.
Yes, that is true. And Apple have now prevented them from doing that. And they politely, apparently, asked Facebook if they would like to withdraw their app. So there you go.
I wish I'd sent my article to Apple, but and this is the thing. It's like oh, by the way, if you are trying to use a VPN like Proton VPN or Open VPN on iOS 12 and you've got it working, can you let me know? Because they won't stay running in the background for me.
I spoke to Proton about that because I'm on the iOS 12 beta, and the Open VPN app, which they previously recommended to use until the iOS app appears, is not fully compatible with iOS 12, and they did tell me how to do it, and it involves setting it up so you have to turn it on from the control panels, the system prefs.
I'll have a look at that.
I will. I'll see if I can dig up the instructions for you, and maybe I'll even put them on the in the notes. Actually, right. And talking of VPNs, Proton VPN have posted an article on their blog: 12 mistakes that can get your data hacked and how to avoid them. Which is a list of don'ts. And it's not so much about you should use a VPN, although obviously as a VPN provider they suggest you use a VPN, but it's mostly common sense advice about not oversharing on social media and so on. Don't give away all your personal details so that you can be personality hacked, as it were. And then VPN Pro have an article kind of related, 7 most dangerous VPN security risks, which talks about how you should do proper research into the VPN you want to use, check their security policies, their privacy policies, where they're based, and so on. And they also have a list of the best free VPN services, and I'm glad to say that Proton VPN comes top of their list of 4 best free VPN services. So that's
quite rightfully they should do. It is. I think we will both agree. There is a little bit of faff to go through to set it up for iOS, but once it's up and running, and especially when I was on iOS 11, it was like, there's just that nice sort of feeling of, just anonymity. Maybe, and maybe I'm being a bit sort of naive, but it's just like it's just a nice, reassuring factor. Like if ever I go in, I'm using a public hotspot, I pretty much won't use it unless I've got a VPN on.
That is the way to do it, Mark. Indeed. And yes, Proton VPN assure me that there will be a native iOS client for their VPN very soon.
Can't come soon enough.
And no, it cannot come soon enough. And lots of people have responded to me in various places when I've mentioned it, saying that's what's preventing me using Proton VPN on iOS at the moment. Because setting up the Open VPN switch is a little bit of a faff. So we're pretty much done. I think there's there's just a snippet is IndiePaper, an open alternative to Instapaper and Pocket, which I found via Cult of Mac. And the app itself is at www.indiepaper.io. If you're keen on that sort of thing, but I have to say it seemed like a lot of a faff, and you have to set it up with your microblog and various other things. But if you're keen on not being tied to Instapaper or Pocket, that might be worth a look. And we've got 2 sort of worth of chirps here. How to Geek have a how to add Mac OS preference panes to your dock for quick access. That's the individual panes, not just the whole thing. Worth a look if you're interested in that. And Scott Wilsey points us to the Bridge 12.9 Series 2 keyboard, which comes via 6 colours, which is a very nice keyboard for your 12.9 inch iPad Pro.
I'm going to go and have a look at that Instapaper thingy, and the Bridge keyboard. I've tried one of the Logitech ones. I might see if I can get my hands on it and do a bit more testing with it, because I was setting up for a customer. So I will have a look at that. But yeah.
Well, this bridge is the kind of bottom half of a laptop.
I had this for the iPad Air 1, and they are nice.
And you simply slide the iPad into the guide rail at the top, and then effectively you have created a super thin laptop.
And
and it's nice because I had a much cheaper kind of copy of such a thing for the iPad Mini. And the bonus is that when you want to pull it out, you just pull it out. It's not clipped into a case or anything else. It's just pushed into the padded grippers at the bottom, and then it hinges like a mini laptop.
Yeah,
so yes,
really nice, and it is a really nice typing experience. I've got a black one here somewhere for the iPad Air Original that I wish would work with my Pro, but I've only got the small Pro. So yes, right then. I think we're done, aren't we, Simon?
I think we are pretty much done. I think that is it, isn't it?
Big thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers, to all of those people in the Slack chat room. I've realised that I've not been getting notifications, so I need to sort that out and then get myself back in there. If you want to get hold of me, you can follow my exploits in the world on the Twitter at Ocean Speed, or more than likely follow me on the website of essentialapple.com.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. And I am, of course, on the Twitter as @Serenak, and that's SERENAK. The show is, of course, at Essential Apple. The website is essentialapple.com. You can find us on all good podcast applications. You can find us now on Spotify. You can find us on SoundCloud and YouTube, and mymac.com, and millions of other places which are all listed in the show notes. So I think that'll do for now, don't you?
Always leave us a review on the iTunes store. We've not had one in like a bajillion years. So leave us a review because we like reading them out. And plus, let's face it, it gives us content, something that we struggle with.
That is true. I will just point out interesting statistics about listening, Mark, as we were talking about in the break. Spotify, despite my original thought that it would probably have no listeners at all, is now some sort of floating between number 1 and number 2, depending on whether you look at it over a month or a week. And the top 4 clients for listening to this show are, in fact, Chrome, Spotify, Overcast, and the Apple Podcasts app. And then a long way below that, about another 20 different clients. And the top 4 make up 40% of our listeners. So, there you go. Spotify has, I don't know if it's claimed us any new listeners, but it's certainly popular.
It does make for some interesting stuff. So yeah, we'll keep everyone updated on that as we go along. Cool. Right then, Simon, I am out of here. Somewhere out there, somewhere, there is a craft ale with my name on it.
And I am going to turn on the oven and put in my gammon joint. How exciting is my life?
Who says we can't live on the rock and roll edge?
Indeed. Right. So, goodbye, everybody. Bye. You've been listening to the Essential Apple Podcast. And I'd like to say, if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, feel free to go over to the website essentialapple.com, and you will find links to both Patreon and the Pinecast Tips Jar, where you can make a donation towards the costs of the show, or even, if you're really keen, you could set up a recurring payment. And thank you very, very much to all the people who already do support us. We really do appreciate you very much indeed. This show is, of course, part of the My Mac Podcasting Network, where you can find a variety of other shows like the My Mac Podcast with Guy and Gaz, the G-Men, Tech Fan with Tim and David, the Nintendo Club Podcast, the Geekiest Show Ever, the Three Geeky Ladies, Bart Bouchot's and his wonderful Let's Talk Apple, and possibly some more that I've forgotten. So why not go over to mymac.com, take a look at the available podcasts, and take a listen.
Amazon, Google, Apple, Android, iOS, Alexa, Siri, technology, sci-fi, video games, tablets, computers, flash drives, toys, weather, and general silliness. Geekiest show ever, every week on the My Mac Podcasting Network.
has been the Essential Apple Podcast. Goodbye and thank you for listening.